Teresa found me after I left the stage. I played a song in which one of the lines is, "Somebody said I was a genius, like that means a goddamn thing." And she wanted to know, is that true? And is there crazy that goes with that? And I said yes, and yes. She asked to read my palm and almost immediately dropped my hand when I gave it to her. She said, "You're on a very fast horse and you're pulling back on the reins so hard." And the question, I guess, was, is there any other option? And that question, I think, is where the story of Not Pictured really begins. There's this cult of self-care that's propagated and supported in no small part because of Tumblr. And there are a lot of great things about that. But I think that it reinforces a notion in our culture that paraprofessional help is a replacement, an adequate replacement for professional help. For a lot of people that's true, but for a lot of people it's not. You can get through rough patches with things like self-care and friends and whatever you can use to cope in that way. But they will cycle back a lot of times, and maybe you need to be medicated as well. Maybe you need to talk to a professional as well. Maybe you need to learn that lithium is not just a scary Nirvana song. I lost a friend that kind of started my spiral down into really needing professional help. He and I were, choosing my words kind of carefully, we were very close friends for almost 10 years, but I can't say that we were good friends. I lost him in part, I think, because my mental illness hurt his feelings. At the time, they called you Tin Man. 5 years later, that's just where I am, but I'm tired. But he was the nexus of a lot of things for me. He was sort of the center of my social environment for a long time, to the extent that my friends were our friends, and to lose him, I felt like I lost everybody all at once overnight, and it became very easy to isolate. In the end, I did seek professional help, which I probably should have done a long time ago, but I started therapy and I got medicated for the first time, and I'm still kind of learning what my brain is now. The first track on Not Pictured is Brewster, You've Been On My Mind, which is a song I wrote for Spalding Gray, who's a hero of mine who killed himself, threw himself into the river in New York City. And he's an amazing writer, amazing orator, I guess, and his superpower was this incredible memory that he had. It's something that I related to, and I related to a lot of his struggles, but that's not a superpower that I have any longer. I'm sort of walking around with kryptonite in my pocket. So Not Pictured in some ways became a way to write myself out of that writing. It's the most epigraphic thing that I've ever done, and in a way is probably a swan song for my epigraphic writing, because I don't have that facility any longer. One of the questions that I was asked about Not Pictured, and sort of just my creative work in general, is how important is it for the audience to get what I meant and what I intended? And I think in some ways it's very important, and in some ways it's not. Honestly, Not Pictured is informed a lot by program symphonies and the notion of creating a designed experience, which is something that I've also explored a lot because of the work of Sean Bouchard in analyzing interactive media, specifically games, as designed experience. So I think a lot about designed experiences and records and music as designed experiences, and that's exactly what Program Symphony is. There are a few threads that come together to build the program of Not Pictured. Brewster is kind of an overture. Starts with sort of a French overture of noise instead of horns, and the first thread picks up in track 2 immediately, which is sort of the story of my response to the dissolution of that friendship that I spoke of. The first track in it is just total self-recrimination and resignation. It's called Congratulations on Your Heart, and it may not be factually accurate, but it's 1000% true. It is tiny memoir. There's an and yet leading into the next track, which is kind of this yawp, this death howl, this pain of please, please, please don't let this change, please don't let this go away. And it did anyway. The thread drops off there a little bit and comes back later on. It's in the final track, which is sort of a resignation to the obsessive thinking that I have about relationships, particularly failed relationships, and questions of what does that mean for me in the future? How normal can that get? After the friend tracks, there swells up suicide tracks. They're separated by an and yet as well. Green Street is a song about attempted suicide and psychosis, and it's a very difficult song for me. Early versions were very chaotic and noisy, and did not feature the quote from Berlioz, but I knew for this record and in this context, the context that the song would be received in with these other tracks, it needed clarity that I hadn't been able to give it before, that I was not brave enough to give it before. But it needs to be a clear and frank song, and that's what it became for this record.
Kinda fucked up on Green Street, where all the fire trucks drive, where all the police cars drive, where all the ambulances drive.
Following or creating the and yet with that track is Don't Take My Guns Away, which harkens back to Neil Young in the arrangement, in the sonic aspect of it to an extent, and is sort of my rendition or my interpretation of Change Your Mind. It is me changing my mind, and it's maybe the dumbest lyrics on the record, but I like that song a lot, and it means a great deal to me. Following the suicide is where the record pivots, in the same sort of way that my favorite album of all time, Red-Headed Stranger, pivots around Can I Sleep in Your Arms. This record pivots around Not Pictured. It's that hope that is just bound to be dashed, but that hope of a new romantic relationship. And and sort of the self-confidence that can engender if you hold on to those beginnings. I had gone on a few dates and then not anymore, and then a few dates again, and I was reminded that I liked this guy, and I forgot about that. And remembering that I liked him sort of changed everything. Like, no matter what happens, I liked him. I especially, like, our first few dates I thought were really good. And that can be transformative and bolstering, even if it doesn't, you know, work out. So then there's the end yet of it's not working, and I'm not waiting, and I'm proud, and I'm not gonna let this dominate my mind or whatever. All of the bullshit that we get when we grow up and learn to be colder. So see you when I see you is the just cold-hearted nonsense. And there's a quote that sort of inverts Your Song by Elton John in there, which is fun for me and I think is kind of hilarious. And that's followed by Big Fun, which is an instrumental. Big Fun is the literal translation of the Welsh phrase for goodbye, and it is kind of a bittersweet resignation sort of thing. The Welsh spoken in the background by my friend Kat is "This is not for you," which epigraphically ties to Mark C. Danielewski's House of Leaves, but it also is a way of acknowledging that, you know, that resignation is mine. Like, goodbyes are for us. Goodbyes aren't for other people necessarily. Sort of on the heels of all the romantic stuff, as that closes, and this recognition that goodbyes are for us and not the others, there's a return to the obsessive thinking about that friend situation. Mort Dulac is full of defensive wounds imagery, and is sort of intentionally disturbing in that way. I don't know if everybody's disturbed by it, but it's something that kind of is under my skin about that song. Mort Dulac is an acknowledgement of the relationship as it actually was in some ways. I was Lancelot to his King Arthur in many ways, especially from his point of view, I think, as a betrayer. But there's also some kind of sly zombies quotes that I think is fun and enriches it if you know about it, but isn't necessary that you catch. It's more of an Easter egg, I guess. The culmination of the record and the culmination of that friend thread is in the final track, To Say Nothing of the Steadicam. But in between, there's a little bit of obsessive thinking about gayness. Homonormalized and Madame Piotr are both gay songs. I decided a while ago that I was going to write the gayest music that I could, and those are two of my big gay songs. Madame Piotr especially is bittersweet for me. It's the and yet between Homonormalized and Madame Piotr is sort of an acknowledgement that I can think these big thoughts in general terms, but I'm also going to latch on to a hero and sympathize with that tragic figure. And in the song, the tragic figure is Pyotr Tchaikovsky and his life as a would-be drag queen, like brilliant composer and all of that, sure. A deeply flawed and damaged individual. Like, if you don't know anything, learn more about him. It's pretty fucked up. But he would have also been a drag queen, or a transvestite. Like he loved wearing women's clothing, and he couldn't. And that's pretty upsetting for me that he couldn't do that. But it ties in again with Brewster. You've been on my mind, and how all of my heroes seem to be tragic characters. But you know what are you gonna do? I think my hope for Not Pictured is that it's a rite. It's an exorcism in a lot of ways. It's writing myself out of my 20s. It's writing myself out of this obsessive epigraphic style. It's writing myself out of a lot of insecurities. It's writing myself out of cleverness. Cleverness can be good, but being genuine is really important too. And I think at least my next few works, the next few projects that I work on are gonna be a lot more genuine, are not going to have this blind spot. What is not pictured on the album is everything that I'm alluding to, everything that maybe you need to fill in the picture, maybe everything that I couldn't say, or I didn't say, or I didn't know how to say, or I didn't have the bravery to say. Not Pictured is, I think, really impressive to me. I'm proud of it. I don't know that I could have written anything else following the events and my mental health over the last few years. But I'm glad that it's over.